The new questions really were to do with it's to do with the meaning of the word Buddha.
Well, if you meet him, kill him. So we start there.
Okay.
We start with getting the intellectual concepts of Buddha. You have to work through that. And what my problem is, John, is that the Buddha is an energetic beingness that you can't talk about intellectually. I can't. It's on a much higher level than that. And I've been making 3-minute videos on YouTube. And I always try to convey that on the mental level, you're never going to get an answer like, who is the Buddha? You'll never get a workable answer in words. Vernon Howard used to say, never answer a question on the level of the question. So you might say, then Buddha is an energetic experience that bypasses the mind. It's bigger than the mind. You got to get to something where the mind gets its nose out of the problem, So then what have you got? You got silence, which interests me a great deal. The still point, where you say, what is the Buddha?
Okay, so you would say that it's the mind. It's like a still mind, or the silent point, as you put it.
No, it's not the mind. It's what comes after the mind has finally sat down and shut up. It transcends the mind.
So is that, okay, something that transcends the mind? By the mind, do you mean thoughts? Or do you mean the awareness? Or
I mean concepts, ideas.
Yeah, all of it, yeah.
Leonard Cohen was a great teacher for me, and he has a short poem in his last book, The Flame. I don't know if you're familiar with that, his posthumous writings.
I'm not. I'm familiar with some of the earlier writings.
But he has a beautiful line, and I can't quote it, but it's something about you show him all these beautiful mountains. And he said, well, that mountain is something, but he said, but it's just another limit. So the word Buddha applied mentally is just another limit.
Okay. What about the historical Buddha as a figure in history? What is your view on that, perspective on that?
It doesn't interest me.
It doesn't interest you as a person that existed 2,500 years ago?
Pardon?
How, as somebody that existed 2,500 years ago, that doesn't interest you?
No.
You're not interested. What about what he taught?
I can't remember.
What he taught? Okay.
Only don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
It's beyond contemporary people talking about what the Buddha was. It's like, what are you like? It's like, Doggin said, to study the self is to study the way. So you don't have to study Buddha, you study the self. And you see that the mind is a mechanical process that drives you crazy. If you ask, what is a Buddha? What is a Buddha? You can just churn out books and talks, and you can spend a lifetime saying, what's the Buddha? But what are you like? What am I like?
Right. So you see it as the questions and the investigation as like an intellectual pursuit, which is distracting from what it really is about.
Yes.
So all these, exactly. Yeah, I understand.
Mm-hmm. I met a Peruvian shaman several years ago. And I don't know if people know my story. I think you know it, that when I was in my 30s, my only child died of cancer. And I was led to Vernon Howard, who taught the work of Gurdjieff and Uspensky. And I found that when I was with Vernon Howard, that it didn't matter whether I had lost a daughter, because I was scrambling so hard to hold on to who I was in the face of this man that seemed to know everything about me. So I studied with him years and years and years. But then I met this Peruvian shaman. As I said, I was led to him. And he did some energetic work on me, just whatever he does. And after my session with him, I realized that he had lifted a huge amount of grief from me, that this had been a completely non-intellectual experience. He was simply there, and I was simply there, and it was amazing. And since then, that's where I try to come from, where there are no questions from the intellect, because they're seen to be rather useless.
How did it change you? Was it through like a Reiki type of healing where they use energy through the hands, or did he emit energy through you, or was it just being present with you?
It was more just being present. It started out and I wept a great deal. And I kept my eyes closed. I was laying down on a table, and he just would go, wipe my tears like a mother. And he just didn't hurry me. You know, he just waited till I got through crying. And I remember he did some things of addressing the sacral, the sacrum, telling me to let all the negativity go, let it flow out, do not hold it in the sacrum. But it was his overall obvious love for what he was doing. And I see him twice a year.
Oh, that's nice.
And I said, "Are you my teacher?" And he looked at me and he grinned and he said, "Yes." But I didn't want to ask him what that meant, and he didn't want to tell me. It was just enough. You see, it wasn't intellectual. So I feel like I was taken from the intellectual realm that the work teaches to now experiencing that I am enough. My son gave me a wonderful Christmas present. It went to a little shop, and it was an old motel room key that somebody had painted something on. And what it said was, "You are enough." So forget the Buddha, I'm enough. You know? Now, I don't know that unless I'm conscious. When I'm asleep, I may wonder what the Buddha is and try to figure it out, but that means I'm trapped in my head again. And I think you know this. You know, there is a joy that comes forth from some people that is so huge. And he told me, he said, people like to be around me. And he said, they'll even come up and sort of lean their shoulder into mine. He said, "You know why that is?" And I said, "No, tell me." And he said, "Because I'm here."
Oh, that's nice. How many times did you see him so far?
Twice a year for the last, I'd say, 3 years. I can get in touch with him if I need to. When I was very ill, I had an experience of seeing him on another plane. I saw him with his sister, and they were in Peru, and it seems like one was chanting and one was playing an instrument, and I knew they were watching over me. So when I saw him next, I said, "You know, when I was quite ill, I saw you and your sister, and you were chanting and playing." He said, "Well, it's very interesting you should say that." He said, "My sister is a physician."
Oh.
So he was raised as a curandero, as they call them in Peru. He's been struck by lightning twice.
Oh, I see.
So that was his destiny. But his sister was raised as a traditional medical person. I believe she's a gynecologist, and his son is a physician. But he just works with people on the energetic level. And he meets you where you are. And when I asked him, I said, "Are you familiar with the teachings of Gurdjieff?" He said, "Oh, yes. Yes, he is." He's an anthropologist by degree. He has a doctorate in anthropology.
So did he relieve, was it more the physical, would you say it is more of the emotional suffering that you were going through at the time, or was it also physical? Or a combination of both?
I think it was a destined meeting. Right before this woman died, she sent an email out to her friends. She says, "My teacher is going to be in town. If anyone would like to have a session with him, he's scheduling them." And this had not been done before. And the first time I saw him was at her home. 6 months later, she was dead. And I really feel that it was an extraordinary experience. I picked up a river stone on her front walk. She had a whole row of river stones from her previous home in Michigan. And I said, "Can I have one?" And she said, "Oh, yes, pick one up, pick one out." And she said, she looked me right in the eye, excuse me, and she said, "You can put the memory of this day into that stone." 6 months later, she was dead. She had stomach cancer. It was a destined meeting. And in fact, he told me, he said, "Maybe we are meeting again." Maybe we meet again. So it's been like that with him. It's a very joyful reunion, and he does lay hands on. He asks what's bothering you, and but the thing that he has given me is joy, and the knowledge that knowledge is not what it's about.
So joy, that's lasting joy. You've had this joy since the time you've been with him.
You go in and out of it because as long as you're in the body, you have to contend with the mind and the world and all its problems. But underneath that, underlying that is this knowing.
Knowing.
I know that he says, "I am not a psychic." So it's not that he can tell me my future. No, it's just he is overjoyed to see me and me him.
That's nice. And this joy, so you said that it kind of comes and goes. It's not constant. It goes.
I disbelieve anybody, and I've watched so many interviews. I don't believe anybody that says that they got it
All the time, you mean? You don't, that they don't have it all the time, that they don't experience that all the time?
No.
You think it's impossible to have that?
It has been.
For you?
See, we're all so different. I believe when I make my 3-minute talks that I am transmitting an energy, really though, from Vernon Howard. See, Vernon Howard had a very strong energy, and it was a take it or leave it energy. And I have that just naturally as a person. And when I told Teo, that's the shaman's name, when I told Teo, he said, I asked him a question once. I said, "This woman wants me to help her transcribe some things, and I don't want to." And he said, "What shall I do?" And he said, "You just don't do it. You say, 'This is not for me.'" So I can tell you, if you ask me what Buddha is, I can say that question is not for me. Ask somebody else.
Yeah, it doesn't, exactly. It doesn't seem to, it doesn't seem to interest you or apply to you where you are right now in your life.
That's right.
It doesn't.
It's Advaita. It's on the intellectual thing. Now, I've gone through being a bhakti. I was a bhakti with Vernon. I loved Vernon Howard. And now I would say that I wouldn't call myself anything, really. I think my gift, if I have one, is when I write my daily notes, they have an energy hit. And people either like it or hate it. And most hate it, most don't want it, because the truth is for the few. In my book, I wrote a little book, Bigger Than the Sky.
Right, I read
Oh,
that.
he
I
said,
read that a couple of times.
people have to be led to it. He
Yeah,
said,
very nice book.
pardon?
I read it 2 times. I
It's a
read your book
very,
twice.
it's a very powerful
Yeah,
book because
yeah.
the words are, they're not mine.
And I read a lot of your posts on Facebook.
I'm not on Facebook anymore, except to account, but I don't
Yeah, you don't
engage
use it. Oh, that's
intellectual discussion. The era of discussion is over for me. I don't do any discussion. It's either
just
a
conversing.
higher level than discussion or I don't want it.
Yeah, I completely understand that. It's much better off being that way, I think. It's much healthier and easier than getting into these discussions with people.
Vernon said the law of levels is absolute. And I would say that I was lucky enough to meet a teacher on my level. And when I'm talking with you, we are on that energetic level. So the work says people on the same level can exchange benefits endlessly. But if you're not on a level, you'll never be on a level. You know, they're never the twain shall meet. But if you're on a level, it's a beautiful experience.
Yeah, there's an understanding there, mutual understanding. It's like you tune into the same wavelength, and it just makes it very easy to communicate. With some people, it's
And
very
you don't want to buy anybody's, you know what?
exactly.
BS. You're
Yeah,
with the BS.
right. That's nice. Yeah, that's nice to be at a place like that. Has anything else changed for you since you have been meeting with this teacher, with the shaman? And besides the feeling of joy,
he has never
anything else?
tried to give me a program or to change me or anything. It's like it's just finished, and there it is.
So you're content with everything in your life the way it is right now. You're happy with
I hate
everything.
my ego life.
Okay, what about the rest?
See a difference. You know, there's Vicki, the ego, and then there's this person that is now sort of free to explore energy. And you can't give it to somebody if they're not ready to take it. I have sent people to Teo and they were not interested. One woman went to him and she thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread. The second time she went, I don't believe he catered to her ego and she never went back. So there's that. You know, there's that.
Yeah.
There's always a test.
So people primarily go to him for is it for the healings, or is it for the teaching, or is it just a combination of both, or it's the same thing?
He doesn't teach.
So he just more or less heals. He does the healing through the use of his energy or his presence.
It's his presence.
It's his presence. Okay.
No, he's a very brilliant man. He's very brilliant. Yeah. He can talk to you about anything.
And he does that. He discusses different subjects with you, or is it like a quiet
talk at this facility that he visits? And I just went to one, and I just saw words coming out of his mouth, and that's not what I go to him for. It's to sit with. It's to sit with him. As you do any great teacher, it's to sit with.
And you just feel, when in his presence, you just feel good. You feel happy. You feel.
Yeah, and I told him, I said, you know, I'm with you all the time, and he just laughed and said, yeah.
That's nice.
You know, there's a level on which you hang out with people that's not on the physical realm.
So he has some kind of abilities that way then. Obviously, non-physical types of abilities of being able to communicate with other people, connect with other people, to heal other people.
He told me once, he said, you look wonderful, when he walked in the room, and I said, do you see auras? And he said, yes. And I said, what color is mine? And he told me. Well, about 10 years ago, I went to a teacher who's now dead called Andy LeKay. And he was drawing pictures of people's auras. He said, now sit with me and put your ankle against mine so I can tune into your vibe. And then he drew a picture. He drew a huge heart, and then he colored it with I've got it here. I'm going to show it. I don't know if you can see this or not. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it. It's very clear. Oh. It's like a heart, a green.
Well, I don't know if you can see the colors.
Yeah, greenish and blue line with green.
There's yellow here.
Yeah, I can vaguely see the yellow.
Last time I asked Teo, I said, you can see my aura, what color is it? And he said, well, it's green and blue, and there's some yellow on the outside, and I'll be damned if it isn't exactly. That was verification for me.
Nice.
It's the same art picture. And so he does check your aura, but if I hadn't asked him, he wouldn't have told me. That's just his. I can't see auras.
Did he interpret it for you as to what the colors mean?
No, LeKay told me. He said, your aura is very different from most people. And I said, how? And he said, power. And I feel like I've got a little of that Vernon Howard power that just, like I say, it's very off-putting to some people.
You've always had that, or did that happen after Vernon Howard?
I think I was born with it.
You were born with it.
Just, once again, I resonated with somebody that could just deal with the truth that vitally, the way Vernon Howard did. And
yeah, he said
was the same way. He's like.
It's from what you described about Vernon Howard. He sounded like a very a direct, sort of kind of cutting teacher. I remember one time you said that people would actually throw up before they wanted to go into the.
Oh, it was terrible. Meet him. Because he saw.
Afraid.
Somebody said it's like going through an X-ray machine at the airport. Yeah. He sees all your junk.
He would actually be able to see your mind too, like read.
Yeah, and we would get sick. People would get sick. They'd do anything to get out of actually going to class. It was a very tough experience, and I loved it.
He confronted you with things straight to your face. He would confront you with.
Oh, no. He said, if you give me permission, I will work with you. But if you do not give me permission, he was like a gentleman.
Oh, I see. So you would have to give him permission first to enable him to then tell you what he saw, what he thought.
I had a dream with him after he died. He came to me in a dream and he said, don't be so accommodating. Act a little tough. That's something women need to hear.
Yeah. I mean, you have that about you. You are like very, I noticed, you basically say it the way it is. You let people know what you really think, what you feel, and you kind of give it to them very straight most of the time. I recall this from actually seeing some of the correspondence that you had on Facebook with people.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you do it in a very nice way. It's very like a very nice, friendly way, the way you do it, but it's always, you kind of just get to the point. It's very, well, I like that. I really enjoyed it.
Mess with you.
Yeah.
You know that.
I know, I saw it.
Yeah.
I saw that a few times, how you did it. It's very, I appreciate that. I could appreciate the way you did it.
Well,
yeah, it's very sweet.
You have to have a really good sense of humor.
Yeah, plus your humor. That's it. You have a very good sense of humor. Very funny.
But I mean, also, John, the real path is you're taking people through hell, right through the middle of hell. It can't be any other way.
Yeah, it's difficult for a lot of people going through that, and I think it's probably why with Vernon Howard they start to feel that way. Maybe feel feel nauseous just at the thought of wanting to meet him, because he was going to let them know what he saw, what he felt. That's that's a tough teacher to have. I think that's a great teacher to have.
Well, you're going to want a teacher that's for the few. You're not going to want a teacher for the masses. You're not going to want a Deepak Chopra.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You don't want it watered down, do you?
Right. I understand. Yeah. Yeah. I think sometimes the teacher that you really need just appears at very strange times. It could be anyone, really. That's what I've seen as well.
Have you?
Yeah, my experience is people just show up out of nowhere and just start saying things, or it could be really anything or anyone. You can learn. That's how I see it. You can learn almost anything from anyone sometimes. About yourself, I mean, how you react to them, if they push a button, if they trigger something, if you learn about yourself. So it's like a mirror, using a mirror in a way.
That's what Bernie Siegel said. He said, when somebody criticizes me, I say, thank you for polishing my mirror.
Yeah, that's nice. That's nice.
But I find also that it's a very solitary way. When you really, really get into it, it's a solitary journey. The inner landscape is quite empty. Either your mind is driving you crazy, or you make that leap into the nothingness, and it's just very empty in there.
How is it for you, like in that kind of place, when you talk about the emptiness or the nothingness? How does it? Is it a feeling of happiness? Are you content with it?
It's more serenity, peaceful.
Peaceful.
But I pay a price. Vernon used to say, take what you want and pay for it. To get to that peace, you have to give up the world. You have to give up your head. You have to give up thought.
And what about other things?
You can't be real social with people because there's nothing in common. Social is false.
What else do you have to give up or renounce?
Well, in a strange way, it's done for you. I don't have to work at not having a social network. I just don't have one.
It happened gradually over time. It just happened that way.
I think I'm just.
Or you deliberately just didn't want to have it.
Yeah, I think I just
didn't want it.
I think I came in with this destiny to sort of be alone. I often say my restrictions were I had to go through the suffering with my daughter and my husband both. But I've always been free to study truth. I've always been free to study. And I've spent years and years and years studying it.
With various teachers, mostly, right? With Vernon Howard. Who else was there besides Vernon Howard?
I've read Ramana Maharshi and Nisargadatta, but the work of Gurdjieff is what Vernon really taught, although he didn't call it that, it was that. And the work is about energy. It's about conserving energy. Vernon said, work hard gathering energy when you have no problem. So a lot of times I'm just gathering energy. And
how do you do that? You do that by...
You can't ask how to do it. You already know how to do it. If I said, John, sit and gather some energy, you'd know exactly what I meant, right?
Yeah, I've got my ways of doing it.
Yeah. I've got yours are very intense, too.
Yeah, I have my ways of doing it. I was just kind of curious as to how if he gave you any particular types of exercises to do. You can gather it through meditation.
It all comes down to just sitting with John, doesn't it?
Yeah, I just basically, I just sit.
Yeah, you just sit.
I don't do
So
much.
how do you gather energy? He just
And ultimately, yeah, I just don't do very much. Yeah, but so he didn't actually give you any kind of a method of doing it.
Vernon.
Yeah.
Oh, he just practiced. The work is about self-observation. To study the self is to study the way. To study the way is to remove the barrier between self and others. To remove the barrier between self and others, for this one must be enlightened. That's Doggin again. So it's about you spend part of your time studying yourself and part of the time studying others. You're always studying.
And the barrier that you speak of, that barrier just at
The
some point.
barrier is we want to dissipate the tension. Vernon created a great tension. Okay. We sat down with him and he created this great tension. But normally, when we feel this tension, we snack, we gossip, we go on Facebook, we play with our addictions, we run. And the work is about what happens when you stop running, and you're thrown back on yourself.
So he basically what he taught was a practice of awareness, right? Being aware of your feelings, emotions, thoughts, sensations, whatever's going through your head or through the body, and to not act out on those impulses or those thoughts and feelings, and just to sit with them and see what happens.
Or he'd say, make an aim and see how you can't keep it. That's informative. To say, I'm not going to eat chocolate all day, and notice the point in the day where you say, forget it, I'm eating chocolate. So he said, take aims in order to see your weakness, in order to see you can't keep an aim.
That's interesting. Yeah, Gurdjieff, I remember the exercise where he did where you had the inclination to sneeze. When you felt like you were going to sneeze, he would say, okay, well, stop. Don't allow yourself to sneeze.
I don't remember that one.
Oh, you don't remember? Yeah, he had that. And one time that he hired this very obnoxious person. Do you know the story?
No.
The obnoxious man. he employed this really obnoxious person to go around in the group annoying people deliberately. Really deliberately to just kind of get under everybody's skin to set them off. This guy was very, very obnoxious, and he would provoke everyone all around him, and he would push everybody's buttons. It was just to see, and it was to test everybody to see where they were at, because a lot of them were thought that they were enlightened. So he brought this person in, and it was very effective for them because they realized that they weren't exactly where they thought they were at. Under certain circumstances, he would push their buttons and really make them go crazy.
It's fascinating.
Yeah,
and a lot of people, left the work eventually. Some went back to church. I feel like I've left the work. Not to join a group, but just to be by myself. I feel like a part of the work is alive in me, but Gurdjieff said you have to be in a group to do the work, and so I'm not in a group, so I can't say I'm in the work. I can say the work is in me, though.
So you still kind of continue doing it alone? You practice?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's the work is what I most resonate with, and the work is esoteric Christianity. It's you can take the New Testament consciously, and it's just a revelation.
Can you elaborate a little bit on that? So the work would be those exercises that we spoke of before, right? This practice where you are constantly aware of what's happening in the mind body, or there's more to it than that?
I'm not sure I get the drift of your question. Say it again.
The work would be the work, because I know what Gurdjieff taught. I'm curious to see what Vernon Howard, the way Gurdjieff taught, he kind of took Vipassana, the insight or the practice of observing yourself all the time.
Yeah, I think.
And it was similar to that. Is that what you mean by the work? It's like a meditation practice, being aware.
The work has always existed, and Sufism is a part of the work too. Truth is, like they say, the golden thread that it runs through Sufism. It runs through the New Testament with the esoteric Christianity. But it's all saying the same thing, that you've got to realize you're playing a role, and playing that role is what keeps you asleep and what keeps you embedded in your suffering. And once you start doing that, you come out from among them. In other words, you don't want a social life anymore because everybody's playing false. Bernie used to say, as long as you want something from the world, you're going to get mauled by it.
So then, yeah,
it's true.
Right. So you become like a renunciant. You basically leave the world behind, and you leave the world behind you. You separate yourself from the world.
I think that's inevitable.
Yeah.
But having said that, I'm deeply introverted, so I might have done that anyway. Because I just don't like large groups of people. That doesn't.
Yeah, your nature is to be like that, right? It's very introverted, quiet.
Yeah.
Being alone, yeah.
But I can sit down to write, and I can guarantee you that I'm not channeling, but it's there. It's here. It's almost like I'm laying hands on the computer, and I get an essay. And they vary. Sometimes they're funny, sometimes they're sad, sometimes they're really hard. I mean, lately I've put stuff up that's very hard. But
if you could send me some of those, I haven't seen them. This is the new writing that you've been doing, right?
It's on my blog.
On your blog?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a look at it. Yeah, I remember your writing from before, from maybe 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think
from that time.
I've finally come to the point where I'm not writing quite as much about suffering. Suffering's still there, but I'm not inclined to write about it as much.
So the subject matter kind of shifted. Was this recently after you met the shaman?
It didn't happen right away. It didn't happen right away.
Right,
But of course, suffering is where most people are at. Most people come to the path because they're suffering. They don't come because they're happy.
And how about teaching? Do you have any like students?
I don't think so. I don't want any.
I
have some people that are very faithful to read what I write, and some people that listen to my videos, but not many. I think I mainly do it because it's who I am. What else have I got to do?
So you just put it out there. You just put the information out there.
Yeah.
But you don't have. You never really wanted to be a teacher, right? Like a formal teacher or anything like that, like Vernon Howard.
I think it's more energy work anyway. Maybe what I do is energetic. And I believe it's for the few. I don't believe it's anything that would ever catch on. I think that the work is not something that has ever been popular. And as far as the online search for enlightenment, I think it's just 90% baloney. It's just baloney. It's just people.
Yeah, well, you and I agree with that.
Being seduced.
We did from the beginning, I think.
Being seduced into being called a teacher. It's a great seduction in that. Don't you agree?
Oh yeah, for sure. That's why I'm the same way as you are. I kept away from all of that, all of that stuff.
Yeah.
But
your practice is quite serious.
It has been. Yeah, it's been a long journey. All kinds of types of meditation, more or less. But it's really what you do. It's really the same. It's very, very similar. You call it the work.
Uh-huh.
I would just call it, what would I call it? I would just call it trying to just be aware of how the mind is. How the mind, just basically watching myself, watching the mind.
That's it.
You know, how it responds to different people, any kinds of, like they call it, in the Buddhist tradition, they call it like defilements. It's like any kind of negative thought or negative feeling, negative energy, or like greed or any kind of aversion. I just look out for it.
That's all Vernon
That's
taught.
that's what I do. I look back if it comes up and I just see it.
Truth is truth, and it's not for the masses. It's for the few that are called to work with it. You know, some of us are called to do this alchemical work.
Yeah, you've been at it a long time.
Yeah, about
How long is it?
40 years.
40 years? And
yeah.
so from when you first began 40 years ago, how much would you say you've transformed?
Very little.
Really?
I think
But you seem very happy now.
But I also think there's this larger, like this picture here. That's the larger self that Teo sees. That he has the gift for healing. He's got the energy to travel and share this with people.
Is there anything that you feel that is left for you to do? Is there anything else that you feel that you need to do in this lifetime? Like that you would like to learn or understand?
I'm forced to keep on with being Vicki.
Just being through what you do.
The good and bad. I don't believe you can escape your destiny. And I consider meeting the shaman to be a grace that was given to me. But I consider a lot of things are given to us that are grace. It's just like the little keychain that my son says, "You're enough." There's a constant battle to be more. The ego wants you to be better than you are. And you have to constantly say, I'm enough already. I don't have to know what the Buddha is or what he taught or anything. I can just sit here and say, I don't know anything.
So is it like a letting go of, it's kind of letting go of wanting to know certain things or wanting more, or what is it with you? Like, how would you do that? You just surrender to it, or?
Well, yeah, it's like I'm looking into your eyes and you're just alive. You're really alive. And it's that aliveness that we seek. And it's not doctrine, You can just get so much doctrine shuffled into you before you say, no, don't feed me any more doctrine, please.
Right, you just, I know.
No more doctrine.
Yeah.
Or no more stories of how you were enlightened and I'm not, but you can enlighten me. See, that's what goes on online.
On the internet, yeah.
They look at that person, they say, maybe they can enlighten me, but they can't. So
you have to do it yourself. You basically have to do all the work yourself, more or less. Is that how you see it?
No, because you've got to account for grace, You've got
with a teacher? The grace of it. Oh, I see.
Well, Vernon said this. He said, you will always get your spiritual gold. So that means even if you think you're not enlightened, if you think you're not making progress, as long as you keep that flame alive and you are witnessing and working and trying to be better, you will get your spiritual gold. It's worth it. In other words, the journey is worth it.
So that entails effort, right? You actually make
You
an
have
effort.
to
You
make an
practice. Yeah, because a lot of people say you don't have to make any
effort.
effort.
You have to
You
make
just sit back and don't do anything. And so
and it,
yeah,
yeah. Take what you want and pay for it. If you want
yeah,
enlightenment,
you got
the price of kissing is your life. So
right. So
I
you
don't
got to
have
sacrifice.
I don't have a life.
So you
So
sacrificed a lot. You
that means
sacrificed a
I'm
lot to get
free.
to this place. You had to give up a lot to get to this place. You sacrificed. You had to let go of a lot of things.
Yeah,
Like you said, your social life, give up the world. Basically, you give up a lot, right?
yeah. And I still feel that loss. I mean, I can feel
Yeah.
it intensely, but in that feeling my loss, I can help other people see that loss is part of the journey. Like if I hadn't had loss, I would just be very plastic, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. It's
And a dilemma is what do we do with this technology? What do we do with Facebook? And like I say, I left it finally after being told repeatedly that it was not good for me, that I needed to stop, you know, because it's addictive.
who told you that? Yeah, who told you that it wasn't good for you? Were people saying it to you, or you just kind of
Oh, this
came
was
to that?
from a friend online that just knows me real deeply, and he said you
Oh,
need
stop it.
to
So
stop.
you stopped it completely then?
No, I write on my blog, and when I blog, then I link that to my Facebook page. But I'm not on Facebook. I'm not talking to people on Facebook.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
And
you're
I
the same
make
as I.
little videos.
Yeah, you put the videos online. You put to
Yeah,
you
but
just
that leaves the rest of the time. I'm just I'm not online. You know, I'm not online, and I don't think there is a final answer. You know, are you enlightened? Are you not enlightened? There is no final answer. On the human level, humans are pretty messed up.
yeah. So do you feel it's possible to actually get to a place where you are free of all suffering? Do you feel that it's possible for somebody to get to a place where they no longer suffer and they're always happy?
I don't think so.
You don't think so? Okay. Have you ever met anyone like that? Ever?
No,
Never?
I don't know. The people that studied with Vernon, they didn't seem any happier than anybody else. I knew his secretary well, and she was not happy.
How
The
about Vernon? Was
people
he
that are
happy?
called to the work are very complex people,
Yeah.
and perhaps they don't have the gift of easy happiness.
Was Vernon happy?
He didn't seem to be happy, no.
Okay.
He was an enigma. He was a one of a kind person. He was so fierce. But as I say, he came to me in that dream and he said, "Don't be so accommodating." And that was a message of love to me. The
How
accommodation is not love, not at all. That there's a certain toughness.
how long ago was
He
this?
said, "Shake the dust off your feet."
How long ago was this when you saw him in the dream?
He died in 1992, and so it would have been that same year.
Oh, I
Been
see.
a year
So
of
yeah,
his death.
okay.
But I do believe that everything is destined. I believe the events of your life are marked out for you, and you have to go through each point. You can't avoid anything. If you're destined to be an alcoholic, you got to be one.
Okay. So when you mean destined, like, is it predetermined or is there any choice that you have? Is there any way that you can change that?
I don't.
Because without having the free will, it kind of doesn't leave much of a way to escape it.
I don't know. That's an age-old question. You know, is there free will? I don't believe there is. Casey said the only freedom you have is your choice of attitudes and emotions.
Yeah.
But I had to go through my daughter's death. I had to go through my husband's death. But I also went through meeting with Vernon Howard, meeting Teo. I've had great suffering and I've had great grace too. But Vicki, is she happy? No, she's not happy. She's human. She always wants more. And that's where Leonard Cohen is a great teacher for me. You know, he says we're all just clinging to the wreckage.
And do you feel that there's any way to ameliorate that? Is there anything that you could do about that?
He says say hallelujah over it all.
That's what works for you.
Or the holy hallelujah. But yeah, you say it's okay. You say it is what it is. Amen. But I'm not going to be bitter. I'm not going to be negative. I'm going to try not to be. I will be, but I'll say, forgive me. You know.
That's nice. Okay. All right, Vicki. I think that's probably. Let me see what the time is. 1 hour. We've been talking for 1 hour. It went so fast. It seems like 2 minutes.
Quite to meet you, you know. It's
yeah,
like,
you too. We've been talking for so long over the years, on and off.
And I could always depend on you to back me up when I had this observation that was it was so obvious to me, I thought, but other people weren't seeing it, and you'd say, "Oh, of course I see it."
Yeah, I remember a few times where I had to intervene a few times.
Yeah.
For you.
That's why I don't do that anymore, John. I don't.
Yeah, I don't.
I'm not going to get tangled up with these people that want to.
I know.
Pontificate.
There's some people out there very.
They're cruel.
Cruel. They're very, very cruel people.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
Well, thank you for.
Thank you, Vicki.